The shuttle landed with a soft hiss on the planet's surface. Wu pressed his face against the window, watching the purple sky shimmer like water. He had never imagined he would leave Earth, let alone represent all of humanity to an alien empire. "Stop looking nervous," Doctor whispered beside him. She was the head of the delegation, a woman who always seemed calm even when the world was falling apart. "They can sense fear." "Can they really?" Wu asked, pulling back from the window. "No idea, but you look terrified, so maybe fix your face." Wu tried to smile. It probably looked worse. He clutched the case in his lap. Inside was his grandmother's, the traditional Korean string instrument she had taught him to play when he was 7. The diplomatic team had argued for weeks about whether he could bring it. In the end, they allowed it because it was the only thing that kept him from having panic attacks. The doors opened. The welcoming committee stood in perfect formation. They were tall, much taller than humans, with skin that seemed to glow from within. Their eyes were large and dark, reflecting the purple sky. When they spoke, their voices rang like bells in a cathedral. Beautiful, perfect, cold. "Welcome, representatives of Earth," the lead said. The translation device in Wu's ear turned the musical tones into flat words. "We will escort you to the Grand Chamber." The negotiations began immediately. Wu sat at the back of the room with the other junior delegates. His job was simple: observe, learn their language patterns, and don't embarrass humanity. The main delegates sat at a long table made of something that looked like crystal but felt warm to the touch. They spoke in their musical language. Every sentence was a melody, every word a carefully chosen note. The human delegates tried to respond through their translation devices, but something was lost. They would tilt their heads, confused or perhaps disappointed. "Your words lack resonance," one of the council members said. "We cannot trust beings who speak without harmony." "We're speaking through translators," Ambassador tried to explain. "Our languages work differently." "Then perhaps your species is not ready for galactic communion." The days passed like this. Each negotiation session ended with the looking more disappointed. Each evening, the human delegation gathered in their quarters, tired and frustrated. "They think we're primitive," said on the third night. "They won't say it directly, but it's clear." "Maybe we should try learning their language without the devices," Wu suggested. "We've tried. None of us can hit the right tones. It's not just language, it's music. Our vocal cords can't do what theirs can." That night, Wu couldn't sleep. He lay in his quarters, staring at the ceiling that seemed to pulse with soft light. His grandmother's voice echoed in his memory. She used to say that music was older than words, that it spoke to the parts of us that language couldn't reach. He got up and carefully removed it from its case. The wood was old and worn smooth by generations of hands. He sat on the floor and began to play, very quietly. The melody was an old folk song his grandmother loved, full of longing and sadness. Koreans called this feeling Han, a deep sorrow mixed with hope and resilience. He didn't know that his quarters were not as soundproof as he thought. He didn't know that the princess was walking past his corridor, returning from her own sleepless night of reading reports about the humans. He didn't know that she stopped outside his door, her head tilting in confusion. The next morning, the negotiations reached a breaking point. Princess entered the grand chamber for the first time. She was younger than the other, with silver patterns on her skin that seemed to shift like water. The other bowed deeply. The humans quickly them. "I have reviewed the reports," she said. Her voice was clearer than the others, sharper. "Your species speaks without tonal awareness. You cannot grasp the basic foundations of civilized communication. These negotiations are pointless." Ambassador stood. "Your Highness, we are trying." "Trying is insufficient. You are tonally deaf. This is not an insult, merely a fact. Just as you cannot see in certain light spectrums, you cannot hear or produce true speech. I recommend we end this exchange." The room fell silent. Years of preparation, the hopes of billions, ending because humans couldn't sing pretty enough. Wu felt anger rise in his chest. It wasn't fair. Humans had music too. They had songs that made people cry, that made them dance, that helped them survive wars and famines and broken hearts. It was different from music, but it wasn't nothing. The session ended. The filed out in perfect synchronization. The humans sat in stunned silence. "Pack up," Ambassador said quietly. "We'll be returning to Earth in 3 days." That afternoon, Wu took his to one of the observation decks. He needed to think, to process the failure. The deck was supposed to be empty during rest periods. He sat on the floor and began to play, not caring who heard. The melody flowed from his fingers, angry and sad and defiant. He played his grandmother's favorite song. He played a modern piece he'd learned in university. He played until his fingers hurt. "What is that instrument?" Wu's hands froze. He looked up. Princess stood in the doorway alone. Without her entourage, she looked less intimidating, almost curious. "It's called a Your Highness," Wu said, standing quickly and bowing. "I heard it last night from outside your quarters." She stepped closer. "The patterns are crude, the timing is imperfect, the tones waver." "I'm sorry if I disturbed." "Why do they waver?" she interrupted. "Is your instrument broken?" Wu looked at his grandmother's. "No, it's supposed to sound like that. The wavering. It's part of the expression. It's how we show emotion." "Emotion," she repeated the word like it was foreign. "Your music contains emotional data." "All music does, doesn't it?" Princess was quiet for a long moment. "No," she finally said, "not for 10,000 years." She turned and left without another word. Wu stood alone on the observation deck, his in his hands, wondering what she meant. That night a message appeared on his data pad. It contained coordinates and a time, nothing else. Wu stared at it, his heart pounding. He knew he should report it to Ambassador. He knew meeting an alien princess alone was probably against every protocol in the book. He also knew he was going to go. Because something in her voice when she said, "not for 10,000 years," sounded like the loneliest thing he'd ever heard. And loneliness, he understood. Loneliness spoke every language in the universe. The coordinates led to a garden. At least, Wu thought it was a garden. The plants didn't look like anything on Earth. They glowed softly in the darkness, casting blue and silver light across the paths. Water flowed somewhere nearby, making musical sounds as it moved. Princess stood beside a fountain, her back to him. She didn't turn when he approached. "You came," she said. "I calculated a 73% chance you would report this to your superiors instead." "I almost did," Wu admitted. He kept a respectful distance. "Your Highness, if this is about the negotiations." "It's about the music." She finally turned. In the garden's soft light, her silver pattern seemed to pulse. "Explain it to me, this emotion in sound." Wu set down his case. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Why does it waver? Why are the notes imperfect? Why does it make me feel?" She paused, searching for words. "Wrong. It makes me feel wrong, as if something inside me is not aligned properly." "That's not wrong," Wu said gently. "That's the point. Music is supposed to make you feel things. But music doesn't. It's beautiful, it's perfect, but it doesn't create this disturbance." Wu opened his case and removed the "May I show you?" She nodded. He sat on the edge of the fountain and positioned the instrument. "This is a sad song. We call the feeling Han. It's hard to translate. It's like deep sorrow that's been carried for a long time, mixed with hope that things can be better." He began to play. The melody was slow, each note bending slightly, wavering like a voice about to break. The princess watched his fingers move across the strings. When he finished, she was silent for a long time. "Play it again," she whispered. He did, and then again. On the fourth time through, he saw her hand moving slightly, as if trying to follow the rhythm. "Your people," she said when he stopped, "you put your pain into sound." Pain, joy, love, anger, everything. Music helps us survive. When we're sad, we sing sad songs. When we're happy, we sing happy songs. It helps us understand what we're feeling. We don't do that. Princess sat down on the fountain's edge, several feet from him. All music is ceremonial, it's for unity, for harmony. Everyone sings the same notes. Everyone moves together. There is no individual expression. That sounds lonely, Wu said before he could stop himself. She looked at him sharply. For a moment he thought he'd insulted her, then her shoulders dropped slightly. Yes, she said, I've never had a word for it before, but yes, lonely. Over the next 3 nights, they met in the garden. Wu played his grandmother's songs. He played modern music from Earth. He even tried to teach the princess a simple melody on though her fingers struggled with the unfamiliar movements. On the 4th night, she brought something with her, a data tablet. I found this in the Forbidden Archives, she said. I had to use my royal clearance to access it. Look. The tablet displayed text in script. Wu's translation device processed it slowly. It was a historical record, thousands of years old. The silencing, he read aloud. 10,000 years ago, the elders decided that individual expression created discord. Songs that came from one voice, not the collective, were declared dangerous. They called it the Great Harmonization. They destroyed all personal music, Princess said. Her voice shook slightly. They made it illegal to sing alone. Every child is taught that we evolved past such primitive needs, but we didn't evolve. We were silenced. Wu looked at her. In the garden's light, she looked younger, more uncertain. Do you have a personal name, a name just for you? What do you mean? Is your title right, Princess? But do you have a name that's yours alone? She was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, barely audible, she said, My grandmother called me when I was very small, before the teachers corrected her. It means lone melody. Wu repeated softly, It's beautiful. Her hand went to her face. She touched her cheek, then looked at her fingers in confusion. They were wet. What is this? Am I malfunctioning? You're crying. It's what happens when humans feel strong emotions. I guess can do it too. I've never, no one has, she stood abruptly. I should go, this is inappropriate, I am a princess. You are from a primitive species. This exchange violates protocols. Wait, Wu stood too. I've been thinking, your language, the way you speak. It's musical, right? What if that's the key? Not the formal ceremonial version, but personal songs. If I could learn to sing really sing, not just repeat phrases. Impossible. Humans don't have the vocal range. Maybe not for the formal language, but for personal songs, the forbidden ones. Those might be different. They were made for individuals, not perfect choruses. Stared at him. You want to learn the forbidden language. I want to understand you. And I think if I could sing in your language, really sing, maybe your people would understand that humans aren't tonally deaf. We're just speaking the wrong type of. She looked around the garden nervously. If anyone discovered this, teaching forbidden songs to an alien, I would be brought before the council. So we'll be careful. Why would you risk this? Your delegation is leaving in 2 days. You could go home safely. Wu thought about his grandmother, about all the songs she'd taught him, about how music had helped him through her death. Because music is how we connect. It's how we tell each other we're not alone. And you seem very alone. She made a sound that was almost a laugh, though it came out broken. I am surrounded by millions of my people. That's not the same as not being alone. The next night, she taught him his first words in the forbidden tongue. Not the formal used in negotiations, but the old language of personal songs. His human vocal cords couldn't hit all the notes, but he found that if he bent them, let them waver the way his strings did, something worked. Wrong, she said, but she was smiling. Beautifully wrong. They worked through the night. She taught him words for sadness, for longing, for the feeling of standing apart from everyone else. He taught her Korean words in return. Han. Concepts that didn't translate perfectly but that she somehow understood. As dawn approached, Wu realized something. I want to write you a song, in your language, the forbidden one, a song that tells your story. My story. The princess who wanted to sing alone. She touched her face again, checking for tears. This time she was ready for them. That sounds dangerous. The best songs usually are. She looked at him in the growing light. You barely know me. I know loneliness. I know what it means to carry your grandmother's memory. I know what it sounds like when someone's voice wants to break free but can't. She had to return before her attendants noticed her absence. You have 1 day before your delegation leaves. You can't write a song in 1 day. Watch me, Wu said. She paused at the garden's entrance. Thank you, Wu, for hearing what I couldn't say. Then she was gone, and Wu was left with the impossible task of composing a song in a language that had been forbidden for 10,000 years, for a princess who had just learned how to cry. Wu worked through the morning in his quarters, his fingers moving across the strings while he hummed the words had taught him. The forbidden language was different from the formal one. It moved like water instead of crystal. It bent and swayed. It breathed. You look terrible, said when she found him at noon. She'd brought him food from the delegation's dining hall. When did you last sleep? I'm not sure. What day is it? Our last day. We leave tomorrow morning. She set the food down and crossed her arms. Want to tell me why you've been disappearing every night? Wu's hands froze on the strings. I've been practicing. Practicing what? I hear you in here making sounds that aren't human and aren't the we've been learning. And yesterday, one of the servants mentioned seeing Princess in the old gardens at dawn. Sat down beside him. Wu, what are you doing? He told her everything. About the midnight meetings, about the forbidden songs, about his real name, about the song he was trying to write. Listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. You know this is insane, she finally said. I know. You're risking an intergalactic incident. I know. And you're doing it anyway. She's been alone for her entire life, surrounded by billions of people and completely alone, because they took away her ability to express who she really is. If I can give that back to her, even for a moment. Sighed, you're going to get us all in trouble, but I understand. What do you need? Time, and maybe help understanding some of these concepts. There's a word she taught me, but I can't figure out how to pronounce it right. They worked together until evening. His knowledge of helped them bridge the gaps between human and expression. The song took shape, piece by piece. Wu didn't notice the sun setting. He didn't notice when left to attend the final diplomatic dinner. He was lost in the music, in the story he was trying to tell about a princess who remembered her true name. A chime at his door broke his concentration. He opened it to find a guard standing in the corridor. Behind the guard stood 3 members of the High Council. Wu of Earth, the eldest council member, said, "You will come with us." His stomach dropped. What is this about? You have been observed meeting privately with Princess. You have been heard speaking the forbidden tongue. These are serious violations of our hospitality protocols. They took him to a chamber deep in the palace. It was circular, with walls that seemed to absorb sound rather than reflect it. The council members sat in elevated positions around the room. Wu stood in the center, feeling very small. Do you deny the accusations? The eldest asked. No, I met with Princess. She was teaching me about culture. She was teaching you forbidden knowledge, corrupted forms of communication that were purged from our society for good reason. Do you understand the damage you've done? Damage? I don't understand. We were just talking, sharing music. Another council member leaned forward. Individual music creates discord. It makes people think they are separate from the whole. It breeds loneliness, sadness, disconnection. Our ancestors eliminated these toxins from our culture. You've reintroduced them to a member of our royal family. But was already, Wu stopped. Saying she was already lonely would make things worse. Princess, the eldest corrected sharply, has been scheduled for a harmony ceremony in 3 days. The procedure will correct any discordant thoughts you've planted. She will return to perfect alignment with our people. What does that mean? What's a harmony ceremony? The princess's thought patterns will be harmonized with the collective. Her memories of individual expression will be softened until they no longer cause disturbance. The council member said it like it was a medical procedure, something routine and helpful. Wu felt sick. You're going to erase her memories. We are going to help her. And you, Wu of Earth, will be on a ship back to your planet by morning. Your entire delegation will leave immediately. The negotiations are terminated. They dismissed him. Guards escorted him back to his quarters and stationed themselves outside his door. He was under house arrest. Wu paced his room, his mind racing. 3 days. Had 3 days before they took away everything that made her individual. Before they erased the part of her that could cry, that could feel lonely, that had a name she wasn't allowed to use. His data pad chimed. A message from an unknown source. Just coordinates again and 3 words, please help me. He looked at the door, guards outside. He looked at his window, 30 floors up. He looked at his. Then he looked at his data pad again and started composing a message too. An hour later, his door chimed. He opened it to find standing there with Ambassador and 2 other delegates. We heard what happened, Ambassador said, stepping inside quickly. The guards didn't stop them. They were still part of the official delegation. The council contacted us. We're leaving in the morning. We can't leave, Wu said. They're going to hurt her, the princess. They're going to erase her personality. I know, told me everything. Ambassador looked tired. But we can't interfere with internal matters. If we try, it could cause a real diplomatic crisis. So we just abandon her. We don't have a choice. Yes, we do, Wu picked up his. There's a farewell ceremony tomorrow, right? Before we leave, a formal goodbye. Yes, but I can perform there. One last gesture of human culture. They can't refuse without being rude. His eyes widened. The song, you want to perform the song. If I can reach her before the ceremony, if I can remind her who she really is, maybe she'll fight back. Maybe she won't go through with it. Or maybe you'll make everything worse, Ambassador said. But he was listening, not dismissing the idea. The respect rules and protocols, Wu said. They have to give us a farewell ceremony. They have to let us present something. If I can sing to her, if I can show the whole council that humans understand emotion, understand individuality, maybe it will mean something. It could start a war, one of the other delegates said. Or it could save a life, countered. Maybe millions of lives. If speaks up, if she shows that there's another way to exist, it could change their entire culture. Ambassador looked at each of them. Then he looked at Wu. You'd really risk everything for her. Wouldn't you? If someone was about to lose everything that made them who they are. There was a long silence. Finally, Ambassador nodded. All right, I'll request time for a cultural performance at tomorrow's farewell. But Wu, if this goes wrong, it's on you. I know. That night, Wu sat in his quarters and finished the song. Every note, every word, every breath. He practiced until his voice was raw, until his fingers could play the melody without thinking. The song told the story of a princess named who remembered what her people had forgotten. That being alone with your own thoughts wasn't wrong. That individual voices mattered. That loneliness meant you were brave enough to be yourself. As dawn approached, his data pad chimed one more time. Another message from, I heard them talking. I know what you're trying to do. It won't work. They're too powerful. He typed back, maybe, but someone has to try, someone has to sing. Her response took a long time. When it came, it was just 2 words, thank you. Wu set down his data pad and picked up his grandmother's. Tomorrow, he would sing in a language forbidden for 10,000 years. Tomorrow, he would try to reach a princess locked behind walls of perfect harmony. Tomorrow, he would either change history or become the human who destroyed Earth's chance at the stars. He decided it was worth the risk. The farewell ceremony was scheduled for noon. Wu woke before dawn, his throat dry and his hands shaking. He'd barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw sitting alone in that garden, learning for the first time what it meant to cry. He practiced the song one more time, very quietly. The words felt strange in his mouth, his human vocal cords struggling with frequencies they weren't designed for. But he'd learned to make it work by letting his voice break, letting it waver, letting it be imperfect. That imperfection, he'd discovered, was what made it beautiful. "You're going to do fine," said from his doorway. She'd brought him tea and something that looked like bread. "Eat. You need energy." "I can't eat. My stomach is doing backflips." "Eat anyway. You can't sing on an empty stomach." She sat beside him. "I've been thinking about what you said, about loneliness and being yourself. I used to think they had it figured out, perfect harmony, no conflict, everyone working together. But that's not peace, is it? That's just silence." "Silence is easy," Wu said. "Being yourself is hard. Especially when everyone wants you to be quiet," squeezed his shoulder. "Your grandmother would be proud of you." The words made his eyes sting. He blinked fast. "I hope so. I'm using her to maybe start an intergalactic incident." "She'd love that. She always said music was supposed to make trouble." The morning passed in a blur. Ambassador briefed him on protocol. Stand in the center of the chamber. Bow to the council. Wait for permission to perform. Keep it under 5 minutes. Don't directly address Princess, it would be seen as disrespectful. "So I just sing and hope she's listening?" Wu asked. "That's the plan. It's not a great plan, but it's what we have." At 11, the delegation gathered. They dressed in formal Earth attire, simple and dignified compared to the flowing robes they wore. Wu carried his case like a shield. "Remember," Ambassador said quietly as they walked to the grand chamber, "if this goes badly, we all suffer the consequences. No pressure." "You're really good at pep talks," Wu muttered. The grand chamber was filled. Not just the council, but what looked like hundreds of. The walls seemed to amplify their presence, making the space feel both vast and suffocating. At the far end, elevated above everyone else, sat the royal family. Princess stood among them. She wore ceremonial robes of deep blue that made her silver patterns glow. Her face was perfectly calm, perfectly composed. She didn't look at Wu. She didn't look at anything. He felt his courage start to crack. The eldest council member spoke. His voice rang through the chamber. "We gather to bid farewell to the Earth delegation. Though our negotiations have concluded unsuccessfully, we honor the tradition of exchange. The humans have requested to share a piece of their culture before departure." Ambassador stepped forward and bowed. "Thank you for your hospitality. Our people are grateful for this opportunity. Wu, our cultural specialist, will present a traditional performance." Wu walked to the center of the chamber. The floor was made of the same crystal-like material as everything else. It felt warm under his feet. He could see his reflection looking back at him, small and nervous and very human. He set down his case and opened it. The old wood seemed especially worn in this perfect chamber. His grandmother's instrument, carried across space to this moment. He sat cross-legged on the floor, positioning the across his lap. His fingers found the strings, muscle memory from years of practice. "This is he said. His voice echoed strangely. "It's from my country on Earth, Korea. My grandmother taught me to play it. She said music is how we remember who we are when the world wants us to forget." Some of the shifted, others remained perfectly still. Wu took a breath. "In my culture, we have a concept called Han. It's a deep sadness mixed with hope. It's the feeling of carrying something heavy for a long time but never putting it down because it's precious. This song is about Han. He began to play. The first notes were pure Korean melody, the traditional song his grandmother loved. The listened politely, the way you'd listen to something quaint and primitive. Then slowly, carefully, Wu began to change the melody. He wove in the frequencies had taught him, the forbidden ones, the notes that bent and swayed instead of standing straight. His voice joined the strings, singing words in the old tongue. The chamber went very still. He sang about remembering, about names that couldn't be spoken, about standing in gardens at dawn learning how to cry. He sang in broken, mixed with Korean musical patterns, creating something that had never existed before, a bridge between two worlds. Some of them began to murmur. The council members leaned forward, but Wu didn't stop. He couldn't stop. He sang about a princess named. He didn't say her name directly. That would violate protocol. But anyone who knew the forbidden tongue would understand. Anyone who'd ever felt alone in a crowd would hear it. The song built, his voice growing stronger even as it wavered. The strings hummed with frequencies that made the chamber walls vibrate slightly. He was singing in two languages at once, telling two stories that were really one story. He was singing about the courage it takes to be yourself. As he reached the final verse, he let himself look up, just once. Princess was staring at him. Her perfect composure had cracked. Her hands were gripping the armrests of her seat. Her face was wet. She was crying in front of the entire court. Wu held her gaze and sang the last line. In it meant, lone melody, do not be silent. In Korean, his grandmother's language, it meant, you are not alone. The final note faded. The chamber was absolutely quiet. Then Princess stood. Her movement broke the silence like dropped glass. Every in the room turned to look at her. Keep going, she said. Her voice wasn't the perfect bell tone of formal, it shook. It cracked. It was beautifully, terribly human. Please keep going. The eldest council member stood as well. Princess, you are breaking protocol. My name is, she said it clearly, loudly. My grandmother called me Lone Melody, and I have been silent for my entire life. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Some looked shocked, others looked confused. A few, mostly younger ones, looked something else. Hopeful, maybe, or hungry. Princess, you are unwell, another council member said. The strain of negotiations has affected your harmony. Please sit down. The ceremony is scheduled. I will not attend the ceremony. Stepped down from her platform. Guards moved to stop her, but she held up her hand. I am a princess of the royal blood. You cannot touch me without my grandmother's permission. All eyes turned to the eldest on the royal platform. The queen. She had been silent throughout Wu's performance, watching with ancient eyes. Now she stood slowly with the weight of centuries. She looked at Wu, then she looked at the council. I remember, the queen said softly, every strain to hear. I remember when we could sing alone, when our names meant something. I remember my daughter singing to her child. She paused. I remember silencing her because I was told it was right. I remember watching my granddaughter grow up empty because we had made emptiness a virtue. Your Majesty, the eldest council member said, the old ways were chaos. They had to be purged. Perhaps. The queen descended from her platform. She moved toward Wu. Play again, human. Play the song that made my granddaughter remember her name. Wu looked at Ambassador. The ambassador looked terrified but nodded slightly. Wu's fingers found the strings again. This time when he sang, his voice joined his. She didn't know all the words. Her voice cracked and broke on the forbidden frequencies she hadn't used since childhood, but she sang. And slowly, quietly, other voices joined in. Young at first, then some of the older ones. Not many, maybe 30 out of hundreds, but enough to create a sound that hadn't existed in 10,000 years. Individual voices, singing together but not in unison. Harmony that came from difference, not sameness. When the song ended this time, something had changed in the chamber. Wu could feel it in the air, the way you can feel a storm coming. The queen looked at the council. The humans leave tomorrow as planned, but the negotiations are reopened. We will discuss terms of exchange. Your Majesty, and the harmony ceremony is cancelled, for my granddaughter and for any who wish to decline it. The chamber erupted in argument. Some celebrated, others protested. The perfect unity had shattered. Walked through the chaos to stand beside Wu. You did it, she whispered. You broke 10,000 years of silence with one song. We did it, he corrected. You were brave enough to sing. I'm terrified. That's how you know you're alive. She smiled through her tears. Thank you for teaching me that. The human delegation didn't leave the next day, or the day after that. Instead, they found themselves in a very different kind of negotiation. The grand chamber had changed. Instead of perfect rows of sitting in synchronized silence, there were clusters of people talking, sometimes arguing. The sound wasn't harmonious anymore. It was messy and alive. Wu stood at the window of his quarters, watching the sun set over the alien city. Purple light painted the buildings gold. His rested against the wall, silent for now. Still hard to believe, said from the doorway. You started a cultural revolution with one song. I just reminded them of something they'd forgotten. Wu turned from the window. The hard part comes next. They have to decide what to do with that memory. The High Council had split into factions. The traditionalists wanted to maintain the old ways, arguing that individual expression led to chaos. The reformists, led by several younger council members, wanted to explore what had been lost, and caught in the middle was the royal family. The Queen wants to meet with you, said. Today, private audience. Just me. Just you and probably. The Queen's private chamber was smaller than Wu expected, less formal. There were plants growing in corners, and the walls glowed with soft colors instead of the usual bright white. It felt more like a home than a palace. The Queen sat in a chair that looked comfortable rather than ceremonial, stood beside her, wearing simpler robes. She looked different, less like a statue and more like a person. Wu of Earth, the Queen said. Sit, we need to talk without protocol getting in the way. He sat, keeping his case close. You've created a problem, the Queen continued. Half my people want to return to the old ways. The other half want to burn down everything we've built. My council is in chaos. My granddaughter is refusing her royal duties to study human music. She paused, and I couldn't be more grateful. Wu blinked. Your Majesty. I have lived for 300 of your years. I have watched my people become perfect and empty. I told myself it was worth it, that harmony was more important than happiness. But watching sing with you, watching her cry and smile and be messy and alive. The Queen's voice caught. I realized I'd convinced myself that peace and death were the same thing. Knelt beside her grandmother's chair. We're afraid, she said to Wu. The council, the people, even me, we don't know how to be individuals. We've forgotten how. Then learn, Wu said simply. That's what humans do. We're terrible at it most of the time. We argue and disagree and make mistakes, but we're alive while we're doing it. Will you help us? The Queen asked. Will you teach us how to remember? I'm not a teacher. I'm just a guy who plays his grandmother's instrument. That's exactly what we need. Not a master, a guide, someone who understands that being imperfect is okay. Over the following weeks, Wu found himself doing something he'd never imagined, teaching aliens how to be individuals. It started small. He held music sessions in the gardens where he and Had first met, came cautiously at first, then in growing numbers. He taught them simple Korean folk songs. He showed them how to play how each person's touch created a slightly different sound. There's no wrong way, he told them over and over. Your version is your version. It doesn't have to match anyone else's. Some of them cried when they sang alone for the first time. Others laughed. A few got angry, frustrated that they couldn't be perfect immediately. Wu helped them through it all. Became his assistant. She translated not just words but concepts. She helped them understand that the discomfort they felt, that wrongness, was actually them waking up. It's like a limb that fell asleep, she explained to a group one evening. When it wakes up, it tingles and hurts, but that pain means it's alive again. The traditional council members tried to stop it. They called emergency sessions. They argued that individual expression would destroy society. Some of them were genuinely afraid. Others were angry at losing control. The queen listened to all of them. Then she made a decree. No will be forced to participate in individual expression, she announced to the full court. The harmony ceremonies will continue for those who choose them, but they will also become optional. Any may choose to develop their own voice. We will learn to live with both. It wasn't perfect. There were protests. Some families split apart over the decision. But slowly, carefully, society began to change. 3 months after Wu's performance, the first sang an original composition in public. It was a young woman named who worked in the archives. Her song was about discovering old texts, about the excitement of learning forgotten things. It wasn't technically perfect. Her voice cracked in places, but it was hers. The audience, a mix of humans and visitors from other worlds, applauded. Some in attendance looked uncomfortable. Others were crying. After the performance, found Wu in the crowd. "Thank you," she said, "for showing us it was okay to be different." "You did the hard part," Wu replied. "I just played a song." "You did more than that. You gave us permission to exist." The human delegation's mission was finally coming to an end. Earth and the Empire had signed the first treaty, establishing cultural exchange programs. Wu would return home, but he'd be back. They wanted him to help establish their first Academy of Individual Arts. The night before departure, met him in the gardens one last time. The plants glowed their usual blue and silver. The fountain sang its water music. "I'm going to miss this place," Wu said. "You'll be back in 6 months. We have that contract." "I know, but still, this garden, this is where everything changed." Sat beside him. She'd become comfortable with silence. Not the perfect, empty silence of before, but the comfortable quiet between friends. "I've been writing my own songs," she said after a while, "about what it's like to wake up, about learning that loneliness isn't weakness. I'd like to hear them someday. I'll perform one at your welcome ceremony when you return, if you want." "I'd be honored." She smiled at the sound of her real name. She used it openly now, though it had taken weeks to get comfortable with it. "My grandmother wants to learn the—" Can you believe that? 300 years old and she's learning a new instrument. Music doesn't have an age limit. Neither does change, apparently. Looked at the stars above them. "Do you think we'll be okay? My people, we're so used to being one thing. Learning to be many things is hard." "It's supposed to be hard, but you'll figure it out. And when it gets difficult, remember what you told me once. That wrongness you feel, that's not wrong, that's just you being alive." She took his hand. It was a human gesture she'd learned. "Thank you, Wu, for hearing me when I couldn't hear myself. Thank you for being brave enough to sing." They sat in the garden until dawn, talking about music and change, and all the ways people learn to be themselves. Above them, the stars slowly faded as the alien sun rose, painting the sky in colors Earth had never seen. The next day, Wu boarded the shuttle home. He carried his grandmother's, now famous across multiple worlds as the instrument that changed a civilization. But to him, it was still just the same old wood and strings she'd taught him to play when he was 7. As the shuttle lifted off, he looked down at the planet. Somewhere down there was probably in the gardens, practicing her own songs. Somewhere, young were learning that it was okay to sing alone. Somewhere, an ancient empire was discovering that perfection wasn't the same as beauty. And it had all started because one human decided that loneliness was a song worth singing. Wu picked up his and began to play, his grandmother's favorite melody, the one about Han, about deep sorrow mixed with hope, about carrying heavy things because they're precious, about being beautifully, impossibly, wonderfully human. And somewhere across the stars, in a garden with glowing blue plants, a princess named heard the echo and smiled through her tears.